What if I told you that every time you receive the Eucharist, you're standing at the threshold of heaven, but missing the very grace that could heal your heart, change your life, and bring you closer to Jesus than ever before? Pope Leo XIV didn't open his papacy with global politics or church reform, looked straight at the pews, straight at you and me, and said, if you're silent after communion, you're leaving Jesus at the door. And the grace he brought for you, it might be slipping away. Let me ask you something simple but quietly powerful. What do you say to Jesus after you receive him in the Eucharist? If your answer is, I don't really say much, or even nothing at all, you're not alone. So many of us have stood in line for communion, hands outstretched, hearts uncertain, and returned to our pews in silence. Maybe you've bowed your head, maybe you've whispered a prayer, or maybe your mind drifted to what's waiting after mass lunch plans, errands, a long week ahead. It's easy to slip into that rhythm. You show up, you follow the liturgy, you do what you've been taught, but something's missing, isn't it? That's exactly what struck me when I heard Pope Leo XIV's first homily. It wasn't what you'd expect from a new pope. He didn't start with world issues or church politics. He didn't speak about reforms or scandals. No, he spoke about something far more personal. He spoke about you and the way you approach communion. He said, and this hit me hard, to receive the Eucharist without speaking to Christ is to welcome a guest, but leave him at the door. Can you imagine doing that? Inviting someone dear into your home, someone who sacrificed everything for you, and then offering them nothing, no words, no glance, no embrace, just turning away as if they weren't even there? That's what we do when we receive Jesus in silence and then move on, and most of the time we don't even realize it. You might have never been told that the moment after communion is one of the most sacred times in your week. That the God who made you, who suffered for you, is literally dwelling inside you, waiting for your heart to speak. Not with perfect words, not with long prayers, just with honesty. Maybe you've been taught the reverence of the Eucharist, but not the relationship. You've known the ritual, but not the response. And that's not your fault. Many of us grew up thinking that if we just showed up and kept quiet, that was enough. But what if it's not? What if, by staying silent, you're walking away from graces God longs to give you? Friend, this message from Pope Leo XIV isn't about guilt. It's an invitation, a holy wake-up call. What if you've been receiving the greatest gift in the universe and missing the chance to unwrap it? What if everything your soul is aching for, peace, healing, direction, love, is already being offered in those few moments after communion? You just have to say something. In this video, I want to walk with you through what Pope Leo shared and how it might change the way you experience every Mass going forward, not with pressure, not with rules, just with an open heart. Because once you realize what's happening when you receive Jesus, you'll never want to leave him at the door again. So, let's go deeper. You already know that the Eucharist is sacred. You've heard that it's the real presence of Jesus, his body, blood, soul, and divinity. But if we're honest, even knowing that, sometimes we treat it like a routine. You walk into Mass, maybe you're a little rushed, maybe you've just come from a tough morning or a stressful week. You do your best to focus, but your mind is racing, your heart's heavy, distracted, or just tired. You get in line, receive the host, and walk back to your seat. It all happens in a few quiet minutes. But here's the question Pope Leo XIV challenged us to ask. Is this just something you do, or someone you meet? Because the Eucharist isn't a symbol. It's not a gesture. It's not a religious checklist. The Eucharist is Jesus. The same Jesus who healed the sick, calmed storms, wept with his friends, and died on a cross for you. The same Jesus who rose again now waits to enter your soul every time you receive him. That's not routine. That's a relationship. And relationships need more than presence. They need communication. Imagine this. You invite someone you deeply love over to your home. They arrive excited to see you, and you just stay quiet. You don't say hi. You don't ask how they're doing. You don't even look them in the eye. Instead, you turn away, and go about your day. Can you picture how awkward and even painful that would feel? That's what the Pope is trying to show us. When you receive communion and don't speak to Jesus, not even a quiet thank you or a whispered, "I need you," you risk turning that sacred encounter into a missed moment. A moment where Jesus came close, but your heart stayed far. Now don't misunderstand. This isn't about guilt or performance. This isn't about saying a long, polished prayer with perfect wording. Jesus isn't looking for eloquence. He's looking for sincerity. He's looking for you. All he wants is your attention, your heart, a moment of real connection. Even just a few honest words can be life-changing. Jesus, thank you. Jesus, I'm hurting. Jesus, help me trust you again. Those aren't just sentences, they're bridges. They're how your heart begins to truly receive him, not just physically, but spiritually. Pope Leo XIV reminds us that millions of Catholics receive the Eucharist every week, some even every day. But too many do so without preparation, without reflection, and without intimacy. And as a result, they walk away unchanged. You've probably felt that before, like you received communion, but nothing shifted inside. You left Mass the same way you came in. And that's not because Jesus didn't show up. It's often because we didn't. But the good news is, that can change, and it can start today. You don't need to overhaul your whole spiritual life to encounter Jesus more deeply. You just need to recognize that this isn't a ritual, it's a relationship. And relationships begin with simple, heartfelt conversations. So next time you approach the altar, remember Jesus isn't just entering your body, he's waiting for your heart. And all he wants is to hear from you. Now that you know Jesus is waiting not just to be received, but to be welcomed, you might be wondering what to say. Sometimes that moment after communion can feel overwhelming. You're kneeling there, the church is quiet, and your heart is full, but your words, nowhere to be found. Maybe you're afraid to say the wrong thing. Maybe your mind is still racing, or maybe you just don't know how to begin. That's exactly why Pope Leo XIV offered something so simple, yet so powerful, 3 small prayers that you can whisper after receiving communion. These aren't formulas or rituals, they're invitations. And they're for you. Here they are. Jesus, stay with me. Break what is not of you. Teach me to love you. Let's take a moment to reflect on each one. Jesus, stay with me. This prayer is about presence. It acknowledges that Jesus isn't just near you in the Eucharist, he's within you. And yet, it also expresses your longing for him to remain in your thoughts, your heart, your life. You're not just asking him to stay in the moment, you're inviting him into your week, your decisions, your relationships. You're saying, don't just visit, dwell. Break what is not of you. This one is harder, but it's so needed. We all carry things that keep us from growing spiritually. Pride, fear, bitterness, control, distractions. Sometimes you don't even know they're there until you invite Jesus to shine a light on them. When you pray this, you're saying, Jesus, I trust you to shape me. If something in me doesn't reflect, you break it, remove it, heal it. It's a courageous surrender, and it opens your soul to transformation. Teach me to love you. This prayer comes from humility. It's for those times when you feel distant from God, or numb, or confused. You're admitting, Lord, I don't always know how to love you well, but I want to. You're asking the teacher himself to guide your heart back to its true purpose, to love and be loved by him. I want to be honest with you. When I first heard these 3 prayers, I didn't think much of them. They felt too short, too simple. I thought, can 3 sentences really make a difference? But I tried them. The next Sunday after communion, I whispered them one by one, slowly, from the heart. And something happened. I felt still, present, connected. It wasn't dramatic. There were no flashing lights or thunderclaps, just peace. A gentle awareness that Jesus was with me and that I was finally with him. You can experience that too. Don't worry about the words being perfect. Let them come from where you are right now. Whether you're tired, joyful, struggling, or unsure, these prayers give your heart a voice. They're not magic, they're not required, but they're powerful tools to help you open the door wider when Jesus comes in. So next time you receive the Eucharist, try them. Say them quietly. Say them with faith. Say them with longing. Because when you speak even just a few words, Jesus listens. And when you open your heart, grace rushes in. By now you might be feeling stirred. You may even be thinking, I want to speak to Jesus after communion, but something holds me back. You're not alone in that. Pope Leo XIV touched on something that cuts to the core of our experience, why so many of us stay silent at the exact moment Jesus wants to hear from us most. And here's what he said. It usually comes down to three things: routine, fear, and ignorance. Let's unpack that. First, routine. This one sneaks up on you. You've received communion hundreds, maybe thousands of times. It becomes familiar. You kneel, you receive, you sit back down, and that's it. It's not that you don't care, it's just become part of the rhythm. But here's the danger. Routine makes the extraordinary feel ordinary. Think about it. The Creator of heaven and earth is placing himself into your hands, into your soul, and it becomes just another part of your Sunday schedule. It happens to all of us, but once you recognize it, you can begin to shift. You can choose to slow down, to notice, to speak. Even just saying, Jesus, wake me up inside, can begin to break the habit of spiritual autopilot. Second, fear. Maybe you feel this more deeply than you realize. You worry that you won't say the right thing, that your words will sound awkward or small, that your prayer won't be as holy as it should be. So instead, you stay silent. You figure it's better not to say anything than to get it wrong. But friend, please hear this. Jesus isn't grading your prayers. He's not expecting you to sound like a saint or a scholar. He's listening to your heart, not your vocabulary. What he wants most is for you to be real, honest, present. If all you can say is, I'm tired, Lord, or help me believe, that's more than enough. That's where a relationship begins. Third, ignorance. And I don't mean that in a harsh way. It's just that, for many Catholics, no one ever told us. No one ever said, hey, after you receive Jesus, that's your moment to really talk to him. We were taught reverence, which is good, but we weren't always taught about relationships. You might not have known that the moments after communion are some of the most sacred of your entire week. That's not just poetics, it's real. Jesus is inside you. Body, blood, soul, and divinity. He's closer than your own breath, and he wants to hear from you. If you've stayed silent because you didn't know you could speak, now you do, and that changes everything. So take a breath, let go of the pressure. You don't need perfect words. You don't need to impress God. You just need to show up with whatever's in your heart and whisper something real. Because when silence comes from reverence, it's holy. But when it comes from fear, habit, or unawareness, it keeps you from the grace Jesus longs to give. And you were made for that grace. If you've ever felt unsure about what to say to Jesus after communion, you're not alone and you're in good company. Some of the greatest saints in history once felt the same way. They didn't all start off as mystics or spiritual giants. They were ordinary people who chose to speak to Jesus simply, honestly, and from the heart. And they show you that you can do it too. Let's take a look at what they said, not to copy them word for word, but to be inspired by how real and personal their prayers were. Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux. She was known as the Little Flower, and her prayers after communion were just as tender as her nickname. She would whisper, Jesus, make my heart like yours. Let me love as you love. That's not a long, complicated prayer. It's short, soft, but it's full of longing. You can feel her desire not just to believe in Jesus, but to become like him. You can pray that too. Even if you don't know how to love well right now, asking him to teach you is the first step. Saint Ignatius of Loyola. He prayed one of the most powerful surrender prayers the Church has ever known. Take, Lord, and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, and my entire will. Now, maybe that sounds too deep or poetic for where you are right now, and that's okay. But the heart of this prayer is trust. It's saying, God, I give you everything. I'm not holding anything back. Even if all you can say today is, Jesus, help me trust you. You're walking the same path. Saint Faustina Kowalska. You might recognize her as the Apostle of Divine Mercy. After receiving communion, she would quietly say, Jesus, I trust in you. That simple prayer became the foundation of her entire spiritual life. Isn't it beautiful? 5 words. That's it. But those words were everything. And if all you say next Sunday is, Jesus, I trust in you, that's enough to unlock grace. Saint Alphonsus Liguori. He would often pray, my Jesus, I adore you within me. Make me all yours. That kind of intimacy doesn't come from a book. It comes from someone who knows Jesus is not just with him, but within him. That prayer reminds you that communion is more than a visit, it's a union. Do you see the pattern? None of these saints tried to impress Jesus with fancy words. They spoke from love, longing, and trust. They weren't performing, they were connecting. And you can do the same. You don't need a script. You don't need to feel spiritual enough. You just need a willing heart. Maybe your prayer is, Jesus, I'm lost. Find me. Or, Jesus, I'm broken. Heal me. Or even, Jesus, I don't know how to love you, but I want to learn. Whatever it is, say it. Whisper it. Let it rise from the quiet place inside you. Because when you speak to him from where you really are, that's when grace flows. That's when relationship begins. And if the saints could do it, so can you. Let's talk about something that most people never even think about yet. It could be the most sacred part of your entire week. When you receive Jesus in the Eucharist, he is truly present within you, not just spiritually, but physically. The Church teaches that his real presence remains for about 15 minutes, until the Eucharistic host dissolves within your body. Think about that for a second. For 15 minutes after communion, the God of the universe is closer to you than your own breath, closer than your thoughts, your pain, your fears, or even your heartbeat. And yet, how often do we rush those 15 minutes? The Mass ends, and before the final hymn is over, people are reaching for their car keys. Voices rise, shoes shuffle, phones come back out. And Jesus? He's still right there waiting to be loved, waiting to be spoken to, not in some abstract, poetic way, in a real, living way. Pope Leo XIV called this out directly. He said those 15 minutes after communion are a golden opportunity, a sacred window where heaven meets earth, where grace pours out freely, if you're willing to pause and receive it. So let me ask you, what do you usually do in those minutes? Do you rush out the door, already thinking about the rest of your day? Or do you linger, even just a little, in the silence of your soul? I want to encourage you, try staying just 5 more minutes. Stay in your pew, close your eyes, breathe. Let the moment be slow. Let it be awkward even, but let it be. Because those minutes matter. Saint Alphonsus Liguori, remember him from the last chapter? He used to spend hours in thanksgiving after Mass. He would just sit with Jesus, savoring his presence, saying things like, I cannot leave him, he is my all. Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, the Apostle of the Sacred Heart, called those moments the heartbeat of Jesus. She would sit in stillness, listening not for words, but for love. And here's the thing, you don't have to be a mystic to experience that kind of encounter. You just have to be still. You might not hear anything, you might not feel anything, but that doesn't mean Jesus isn't working. Sometimes the deepest transformations happen in the quiet, in the hidden places. In the minutes where you show up and trust that he's there. That's why I started staying after Mass. It wasn't easy at first. I'd get distracted. I'd check the time. I'd wonder if anyone was looking at me. But I kept at it, and over time something shifted. I stopped rushing. I started listening, and I realized I wasn't just waiting with Jesus. He was waiting for me. So try it this Sunday. Just 5 minutes longer. No big speech, no checklist, just you and him. In silence, in stillness, in love. Because in those 15 sacred minutes, Jesus is as close as he'll ever be this side of heaven. And all he wants is for you to stay. By now, you've probably been wondering, does this really make a difference? Does saying a few words after communion, staying just a few extra minutes, actually change anything? The answer is yes. And not because I say so, but because real people just like you have experienced it. Let me share with you 2 stories that Pope Leo XIV included in his message. 2 simple lives, 2 quiet prayers, and 2 powerful transformations. First, there's Thomas. Thomas is a 72-year-old widower from Ireland. For years, he went to Mass out of habit. It was something he and his wife had always done together. After she passed away, he kept going. But something was missing. He'd walk into church alone, receive the Eucharist quietly, say a quick prayer, and leave. He didn't feel connected, just empty. Then one day he heard Pope Leo XIV speak on the radio. The Pope said something that stuck with him. If you leave the altar unchanged, you may have received the bread, but not the fire. Thomas was intrigued. The next Sunday, he tried something different. After receiving communion, he stayed in his pew, and he whispered just one sentence, "Jesus, I'm lonely. Be my friend." At first he didn't feel anything, just stillness. But over time, as he repeated that prayer week after week, something began to change. He said he felt a warmth, like someone was holding him. His loneliness didn't vanish, but it softened. He began to feel God's nearness in a way he hadn't in years. "I used to leave Mass right after communion," he told his priest. "Now I stay, and I feel him with me. I'm not alone anymore." That's the power of relationship. That's the grace Jesus wants to give you. Then there's Maria. She's a 35-year-old nurse from the Philippines. She's a devoted Catholic, faithful to Mass every Sunday. But during the pandemic, she started struggling with anxiety. Long shifts at the hospital, exhaustion, fear, it all piled up. She was praying, but she felt overwhelmed and disconnected. Then she heard Pope Leo XIV's invitation to pray those 3 little phrases after communion. "Jesus, stay with me. Break what is not of you. Teach me to love you." She tried them, quietly, hesitantly, but something changed. The next few weeks, she kept praying them, sometimes in tears, sometimes in silence. Her anxiety didn't disappear overnight, but she said she began to feel peace again. A quiet strength returned. A confidence that she wasn't carrying the weight alone. "I still have hard days," she said, "but I know he's with me. I can feel him carrying me through." You see, this isn't about doing things perfectly. It's about being present. It's about choosing to open your heart right there, right after communion, and letting Jesus do what only he can do. So what about you? What would happen if you gave God 5 extra minutes this week? What if you whispered one honest prayer? What if you trusted him to show up, even in your silence? Because he will, and his grace might be the very thing your heart has been aching for. You've come with me this far. You've listened, you've reflected, and maybe even prayed quietly as we talked about what it really means to receive Jesus in the Eucharist. But there's one more thing, one last beautiful truth Pope Leo XIV leaves with us. And it's this: don't just receive the Eucharist, become it. Let that rest on your heart for a moment. Receiving communion is not just the end of the liturgy. It's not the conclusion of Mass. It's the beginning of something much bigger. It's the spark that's meant to set your entire life on fire with the love of Christ. When you walk back to your pew after receiving the body of Christ, something sacred has happened. You've just been united with the living God, not symbolically, not metaphorically, but really. Jesus has made a home in you. He's come to dwell in your heart, your mind, your soul. But it doesn't stop there. That moment of communion is meant to overflow into everything, into the way you think, the way you speak, the way you love others, into your responses when life gets hard, when people disappoint you, when you're running on empty and still trying to show up. Pope Leo said it like this: "If you leave the altar without a trace of heaven, you may have received the bread but not the fire." Those words are hard to hear, but they're honest and they're loving. Because how many times have you left Mass unchanged? Still bitter, still anxious, still stuck in the same habits that keep you distant from God and disconnected from the people around you. It's not because Jesus didn't show up. He did, every single time. The problem is, sometimes we don't show up fully. We receive him, but we don't invite him to transform us. But what if you started doing just that? What if, after whispering, "Jesus, stay with me," you actually allowed him to stay in your conversations, your reactions, your silence? What if, after praying, "Break what is not of you," you gave him permission to heal that wound, to remove that bitterness, to let go of the pride that's been stealing your peace? What if, after asking, "Teach me to love you," you started loving others like he does, without condition, without keeping score, without waiting for someone to deserve it? That's what it means to become the Eucharist. That's what the saints understood so well. Saint Clare of Assisi would leave communion weeping, not out of sorrow, but because she felt the burning presence of Christ's love in her soul. Saint Philip Neri was known to tremble during Mass's heart, beating so wildly from love for Jesus that it physically moved his body. St. Gemma Galgani entered such deep union with Christ in the Eucharist that she sometimes felt his wounds in her own body. St. Catherine of Siena once wrote, "My soul melts in your presence, Lord. I become one with you." They didn't just receive grace, they let it shape them. And you can too. You might not tremble or weep. You might not feel mystical things, but that's not the point. The point is, Jesus longs to live through you. He wants to make your heart his home and your life his light to others. You were never meant to keep communion to yourself. It's meant to overflow, to spill into your marriage, your parenting, your friendships, your workplace, your moments of loneliness, your quiet acts of kindness that no one sees but heaven. And when you begin to live like that, when you let Jesus not just enter your soul, but transform it, you begin to carry his presence into the world. That's what Pope Leo meant when he said, "The Eucharist is not meant to be contained, it is meant to be shared." You're not just a recipient of grace, you're a vessel, a tabernacle, a living witness to God's mercy in a world that's starving for it. So here's the challenge. Next Sunday, when you receive communion, don't let it end at the pew. Don't walk out of church and go back to business as usual. Instead, linger, speak to him, listen. And when you leave with Christ. Walk into the parking lot with patience. Drive home with peace. Show up at work with a gentleness you didn't think you had. Answer the phone with more compassion than you did yesterday. Love the difficult people in your life with a little more grace. Because you've been fed by love himself. You've been filled with a presence that can change the world one small act at a time. And it starts with your yes. So yes, go to communion. Yes, speak to Jesus. Yes, stay a little longer. But then say yes again out there in the real world. Let the Eucharist shape your tone when you speak. Let it soften your reactions when you're offended. Let it give you courage when you're tired. Let it remind you who you are and whose you are. Because communion isn't just about what happens at the altar. It's about what happens next. You've received Jesus. Now let the world receive him through you.